Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole. Elise was beginning to get very bored. She and her sister were sitting under the trees. Her sister was reading, but Elise had nothing to do. Once or twice she looked into her sister's book, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Elise, without pictures or conversations? She tried to think of something to do, but it was a hot day and she felt very sleepy and stupid. She was still sitting and thinking when suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran past her. There was nothing really strange about seeing a rabbit. And Elise was not very surprised when the rabbit said, "Oh dear. Oh dear. I shall be late." Perhaps it was a little strange, Elise thought later, but at the time she was not surprised. But then the rabbit took a watch out of its pocket, looked at it, and hurried on. At once Elise jumped to her feet. "I've never before seen a rabbit with either a pocket or a watch to take out of it," she thought. And she ran quickly across the field after the rabbit. She did not stop to think, and when the rabbit ran down a large rabbit hole, Elise followed it immediately. After a little way the rabbit hole suddenly went down, deep into the ground. Elise could not stop herself falling, and down she went, too. It was a very strange hole. Elise was falling very slowly, and she had time to think and to look around her. She could see nothing below her because it was so dark. But when she looked at the sides of the hole, she could see cupboards and books and pictures on the walls. She had time to take things out of a cupboard, look at them, and then put them back in a cupboard lower down. Well, thought Elise, after a fall like this, I can fall anywhere. I can fall downstairs at home, and I won't cry or say a word about it. Down, down, down. How far have I fallen now? Elise said aloud to herself. Perhaps I'm near the center of the earth. Let me think. That's 4,000 miles. Down. Elise was very good at her school lessons and could remember a lot of things like this. Down, down, down. Would she ever stop falling? Elise was very nearly asleep when, suddenly, she was sitting on the ground. Quickly, she jumped to her feet and looked around. She could see the white rabbit, who was hurrying away and still talking to himself. "Oh my ears and whiskers," he was saying. "How late it's getting." Elise ran after him like the wind. She was getting very near him when he suddenly turned a corner. Elise ran round the corner too, and then stopped. She was now in a long, dark room with doors all round the walls, and she could not see the white rabbit anywhere. She tried to open the doors, but they were all locked. How will I ever get out? Again, she thought sadly. Then she saw a little glass table with 3 legs, and on the top of it was a very small gold key. Elise quickly took the key and tried it in all the doors, but oh dear. Either the locks were too big, or the key was too small, but she could not open any of the doors. Then she saw another door, a door that was only 40 centimeters high. The little gold key unlocked this door easily, but of course Elise could not get through it. She was much too big. So she lay on the floor and looked through the open door into a beautiful garden with green trees and bright flowers. Poor Elise was very unhappy. "What a wonderful garden," she said to herself. "I'd like to be out there, not in this dark room. Why can't I get smaller?" It was already a very strange day, and Elise was beginning to think that anything was possible. After a while she locked the door again, got up and went back to the glass table. She put the key down and then she saw a little bottle on the table. I'm sure it wasn't here before, said Elise. Round the neck of the bottle was a piece of paper with the words "Drink me" in large letters. But Elise was a careful girl. It can be dangerous to drink out of strange bottles, she said. What will it do to me? She drank a little bit very slowly. The taste was very nice, like chocolate and oranges and hot sweet coffee, and very soon Elise finished the bottle. What a strange feeling, said Elise. I think I'm getting smaller and smaller every second. And she was. A few minutes later she was only 25 centimeters high. And now, she said happily, I can get through the little door into that beautiful garden. She ran at once to the door. When she got there, she remembered that the little gold key was back on the glass table. She ran back to the table for it, but of course, she was now much too small. There was the key, high above her, on top of the table. She tried very hard to climb up the table leg, but she could not do it. At last, tired and unhappy, Elise sat down on the floor and cried. But after a while, she spoke to herself angrily. Come now, she said. Stop crying at once. What's the use of crying? She was a strange child, and often talked to herself like this. Soon she saw a little glass box near her on the floor. She opened it, and found a very small cake with the words "Eat me" on it. Nothing could surprise Elise now. Well, I eat it, she said. If I get taller, I can take the key off the table. And if I get smaller, I can get under the door. One way or another, I'll get into the garden. So it doesn't matter what happens. She ate a bit of the cake, and then put her hand on top of her head. Which way? Which way? She asked herself, a little afraid. Nothing happened. This was not really surprising. People don't usually get taller or shorter when they eat cake. But a lot of strange things were happening to Elise today. It will be very boring, she said, if nothing happens. So she went on eating, and very soon the cake was finished. Chapter 2, The Pool of Tears. Curiouser and curiouser, said Elise. She was very surprised, and for a minute, she forgot how to speak good English. I shall be as tall as a house in a minute, she said. She tried to look down at her feet, and could only just see them. Goodbye, feet, she called. Who will put on your shoes now? Oh dear. What nonsense I'm talking. Just then her head hit the ceiling of the room. She was now about 3 meters high. Quickly, she took the little gold key from the table and hurried to the garden door. Poor Elise. She lay on the floor and looked into the garden with one eye. She could not even put her head through the door. She began to cry again, and went on crying and crying. The tears ran down her face, and soon there was a large pool of water all around her on the floor. Suddenly, she heard a voice, and she stopped crying to listen. Oh, the Duchess, the Duchess. She'll be so angry. I'm late, and she's waiting for me. Oh dear, oh dear. It was the White Rabbit again. He was hurrying down the long room, with some white gloves in one hand and a large fan in the other hand. Elise was afraid, but she needed help. She spoke in a quiet voice. Oh, please, sir. The rabbit jumped wildly, dropped the gloves and the fan, and hurried away as fast as he could. Elise picked up the fan and the gloves. The room was very hot, so she began to fan herself while she talked. Oh dear! How strange everything is today. Did I change in the night? Am I a different person today? But if I'm a different person, then the next question is, who am I? Ah, that's the mystery. She began to feel very unhappy again, but then she looked down at her hand. She was wearing one of the rabbit's white gloves. How did I get it on my hand? She thought. Oh, I'm getting smaller again. She looked round the room. I'm already less than a meter high and getting smaller every second. How can I stop it? She saw the fan in her other hand and quickly dropped it. She was now very, very small, and the little garden door was locked again, and the little gold key was lying on the glass table. Things are worse than ever, thought poor Elise. She turned away from the door and fell into salt water, right up to her neck. At first she thought it was the sea, but then she saw it was a pool of tears. Her tears. Crying makes a lot of tears when you are 3 meters tall. Oh, why did I cry so much? Said Elise. She swam around and looked for a way out, but the pool was very big. Just then she saw an animal in the water near her. It looked like a large animal to Elise, but it was only a mouse. Shall I speak to it? Thought Elise. Everything's very strange down here, so perhaps a mouse can talk. So she began, Oh mouse, do you know the way out of this pool? I am very tired of swimming, oh mouse. Elise did not know if this was the right way to speak to a mouse, but she wanted to be polite. The mouse looked at her with its little eyes, but it said nothing. Perhaps it doesn't understand English, thought Elise. Perhaps it's a French mouse. So she began again, and said in French, Where is my cat? This was the first sentence in her French lesson book. The mouse jumped half out of the water and looked at her angrily. Oh, I'm so sorry, cried Elise quickly. Of course, you don't like cats, do you? Like cats? Cried the mouse in a high, angry voice. Does any mouse like cats? Well, perhaps not, Elise began kindly. But the mouse was now swimming quickly away, and soon Elise was alone again. At last she found her way out of the pool and sat down on the ground. She felt very lonely and unhappy. But after a while the white rabbit came past again, looking for his white gloves and his fan. The Duchess. The Duchess. Oh my ears and whiskers. She'll cut my head off, I know she will. Oh, where did I drop my gloves? Then he saw Elise. Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing here? Run home at once, and bring me some gloves and a fan. Quick, now. Elise hurried away. But where is his house? She thought while she ran. Strangely, she was no longer in the long room with the little door, but outside in a wood. She ran and ran but could not see a house anywhere, so she sat down under a flower to rest.